Revelation 14.
Revelation 14 verse 1. And I looked, and, lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads.
John looked and saw. The Lamb is Yeshua, whose Father is God. Previously Yeshua was in the clouds at the sixth seal to redeem his body. Now during the seventh seal, more specifically after the seventh trumpet and before the first bowl of God's wrath is poured out, Yeshua stands on the earth at Mount Zion. Mount Sion. Both Mount Zion and the Temple Mount are in Jerusalem. Mount Sion's location is the next mount south-southwest of where the first temple was. Mount of Sion was also known as the City of David. When Solomon built the temple, he brought the Ark of Covenant of Yahweh out of Zion and moved it to the Temple Mount, Mount Moriah. With him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. It is clear by this statement that these are the same 144,000 that were sealed at the start of the seventh seal. They will have Yeshua's Father's name written on their foreheads, as they belong to him. Their assignment after 3.5 years will have been complete. Side note, 14 unique ways to identify the 144,000. 1. They have been sealed by an angel of God. 2. The seal is the name of Yeshua's Father written on their forehead. 3. These are men who have not been defiled with women, for they are virgins. 4. They follow and obey Yeshua. 5. In their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. 6. They are specifically those of the tribes of Israel. 7. All the tribes of Israel except Dan, for the tribe of Manasseh, Joseph's firstborn son, is a substitute for Dan. Possibly because Dan is either not ready or was rejected. It could be that Dan had not repented for following idols for most of their lives or for betraying Israel. 8. 12,000 of each tribe are sealed. 9. This takes place no other time in history than just before the 7-year world tribulation period. This is after the sixth seal and before the seventh seal. 10. These are known in Revelation 12 as the woman, the plan of God, through Israel. 11. They testify of Yeshua to the world. 12. They are continually being pursued by the serpent Satan. But they are protected by the two witnesses, and by the earth. 13. At the end of the 3.5 years they meet Yeshua on Mount Zion. 14. They are taken to heaven, in other words, redeemed from the earth. And sing before the throne of God a song that no human can learn that song.
Revelation 14 verse 2. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder, and I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps.
John was on the earth and heard a voice from heaven. The voice of many waters could be of Yeshua or multitude of believers. I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. The harpers are most likely the 24 elders who had harps earlier or a distinct group called harpers.
Revelation 14 verse 3. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne, and before the four beasts, and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth.
The 144,000 sung a new song before the throne is in celebration to God for what has happened and what is about to happen. Previously a new song was sung by the four beasts and the 24 elders after the Lamb was slain. Now just after the 1,260 days and before the bowls of God's wrath are poured out, the 144,000 sing a new song no person can learn. Were redeemed from the earth. 144,000 are purchased away from the earth like purchasing valuables from a market. They are no longer on earth similar to other believers. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes, and we know that Yeshua does not stay on earth as 3.5 years later comes from heaven riding a white horse. Therefore, they too are in heaven and not on earth during the bowls of God's wrath. Side note, the 144,000 rise to heaven just after the 3.5 years, after the two witnesses rise to heaven.
Revelation 14 verse 4. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb.
These 144,000 Israelites are those who were sealed earlier by God on their foreheads. They are also men who have not defiled, not become stained, with women outside of marriage. As sexual relations in marriage is not sinful but honorable. Then John adds that they are not married by stating, for they are virgins. Possibly this is a choice they made to be celibate. The word virgins in a literal and figurative sense can apply to both unmarried women and men. However, based on the context not defiled with women, it refers to all these men. Follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These are Israelites who believe Yeshua and thus follow him in heaven like sheep, for he is their shepherd. Redeemed among men, the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. They will be purchased from the earth, away from mankind. These are the first fruit of those during the first 3.5 years. The remaining fruit from this first 3.5-year period will also be raptured. Side note, the two witnesses were raised to life and ascended to heaven earlier, just before the seventh trumpet.
Revelation 14 verse 5. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God.
The Greek word for guile means deceit, specifically related to deceit for self-gain. The 144,000 sealed Israelites have no deceit for self-gain in their mouth. Yeshua is their example of having no guile in his mouth. They are without fault before the throne of God. The Greek word for without fault is also translated without blame. This does not mean they are without sin, for all have sinned, but that their sin has been washed away. This is what the blood of Yeshua does, washes away sin, and therefore they are without blame before the throne of God.
Revelation 14 verse 6. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people.
John is still on earth witnessing the events on earth and in heaven. Similar to the previous angel who flew in the sky earlier declaring the three woes to come after the fourth trumpet, Revelation 8 verse 13, this angel comes after the seventh trumpet is blown, but before the bowls of God's wrath are poured out. Having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth. The everlasting gospel is clearly to fear God and give him glory, for out of this, one surrenders to God's plan. This leads people to repent of their sin and surrender to Yeshua. Then they receive the gift of Holy Spirit to enable them to do good works to glorify him. To every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people. Nations are those who are denoted by national boundaries, customs, and laws. Kindreds, races, or tribes are those who are denoted with unique physical genetic attributes. Tongues are those who speak a different language or dialect. People are those who are recognizable by John, probably Israelites.
Revelation 14 verse 7. Saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven, and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters.
The loud voice is for people on the earth to hear, for the end is about to come. Those on the earth are to take heed. There is an action they are required to do in obedience, and he is about to make it clear for them. This is their last warning before the bowls of God's wrath are poured out. Fear God and give glory to him. Fearing God and giving him glory is the everlasting gospel that leads people to repent of their sin and surrender to Yeshua. Then they receive the gift of Holy Spirit to enable them to do good works to glorify him. Angels are unable to share Yeshua directly with the world, as this authority has been given to mankind. Therefore the angel shares the starting block that will lead them to Yeshua, fear God and give him glory. Side note, the two witnesses and the 144,000 Israelites who were sealed, had previously declared the good news in Yeshua to the world for 3.5 years. The outcome is that many keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah. The 2 witnesses and the 144,000 Israelites have already been taken to heaven. There is no one to share the good news of Yeshua except those new converts, which are about to be raptured. God sends His angel with these words so that the people of the world seek out the new believers and listen to them. This is their last chance. God is so merciful. For the hour of His judgment is come. For the hour is come is a phrase commonly used by John. The 7th trumpet had already sounded, and this warning is before the bowls of God's wrath are poured out. There is an urgency for those on the earth to wait no longer but respond to the message. If they heed to the urgency and respond quickly, they could be part of those new believers who will soon be raptured. Worship Him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. All environments in which living beings exist were made by Him, therefore they must worship Him. The Greek word for worship includes obeying.
Revelation 14 verse 8. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication.
There followed another angel. This angel follows the angel who had just proclaimed the everlasting gospel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city. Unlike the first and third angel who proclaim with a loud voice so that the people will obey, this angel declares the destruction of the world's prized possession, the city of Babylon. Today we have something similar, the stock market, which impacts the world's prosperity. When God speaks, He always speaks the end state of what He wants. For example, Babylon is fallen. This is similar to His declaration over Babylon during the 5-6th century BC. The city Babylon will fall just before the end of the 7-year world tribulation period. Side note, the same Hebrew name that has been translated Babel and Babylon. The location of the city Babylon in the book of Revelation is unknown. However, the following criteria from the scripture can help us identify what it will look like. Today, the closest city that matches these criteria would be New York City. It also has the infrastructure to meet even more criteria in the coming years. Throughout history, other cities have been identified. The most popular interpretations were cities such as Rome due to their global persecution of Christians and Jews over the years. Jerusalem, where the Lord was crucified and where persecution of Christians started. And the actual historical city of Babylon being rebuilt, next to the Euphrates River, as it was still inhabited when the revelation was given to John. Another city that has been suggested in recent times is Istanbul, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. In contrast to God who made the heaven, earth, sea and waters, Babylon made all nations oppose God. The term fornication means breaking or altering the authority structure God has put in place, walking away from God. Specifically desiring other gods to reign over them or practicing those things such as worshipping and giving themselves to them. This includes sexual immorality that is intertwined in these practices, and sometimes includes intercourse with animals. The kings of the earth have surrendered their lives to her, been influenced by her and therefore have led others astray, and as such she is the great whore, one who lures.
Revelation 14 verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead, or in his hand.
The third angel follows the other angels who came earlier, saying with a loud voice. Like the first angel, the third angel pronounces with a loud voice to warn the people on the earth to hear and obey. If any man worship the beast and his image. The false prophet forces those who do not worship the beast to be killed. The angel warns those who are afraid of the beast instead be afraid of God, and receive his mark in his forehead, or in his hand. Received implies that it was not forced on them, such as holding them down, but a choice the individual makes to receive it. They are pressured to take the mark of the beast as they will be unable to buy or sell without it. The mark is a unique brand image or an etching of the beast's image or his name or his number. The mark is either placed on their right hand or on their foreheads. The forehead and right hand are sacred places on the body where blessings, oaths, and ownership are invoked. The people who receive the mark are giving their ownership to the beast, therefore those who take the mark of the beast are removed from the book of life. It is not like people will wonder if this is the mark of the beast, they will all know, for the angel declares it before it is instituted.
Revelation 14 verse 10. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb.
The angel warns the same people on earth of the consequences for worshipping the beast and taking his mark, his name, or his number. They should be more afraid of God's wrath than the beast's wrath. The angel lists the current and eternal consequences of God's wrath, which is far greater than the consequences of the beast. Side note, the beast's wrath for not taking his mark will force them not to buy or sell, impacting their shelter, food, and water. In addition, the false prophet will also kill those who do not worship the beast. Poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. God's wrath will be poured out without diluting it, as they will receive the full weight of God's wrath, including being diluted as with intoxicated drink. There will be no mercy and no hope for them. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone. God destroyed wicked Sodom and Gomorrah with the rain of fire and brimstone. This is the consequence for the wicked. Those who fail to adhere to the warning will be tormented with fire and brimstone just before Yeshua comes at Armageddon. This will happen again after the judgment at the white throne of God, where they will experience the torment in the lake of fire and brimstone, known as the second death. In the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. This punishment of fire and brimstone happens after the judgment at the white throne of God. Side note, the exact location of the lake of fire is unknown, however there are indicators that it is near Jerusalem. One indicator is that just after the final battle at Armageddon, the beast and the false prophet are thrown into the lake of fire. Therefore the lake of fire must be close to Armageddon. The location of Armageddon will be from the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is just east of Jerusalem, unto the valley of Megiddo, which is north. The second indicator is that those who take the mark of the beast will eventually end up in the lake of fire, which will be in the presence of the Lamb and the holy messengers of God. Yeshua, the Lamb, will reign from Jerusalem and the New Jerusalem, therefore the lake of fire will be close to his presence in Jerusalem. A side comment, we know that the current earth will cease to exist and a new earth will be created, but the lake of fire will remain to cast those who are not in the book of life, Revelation 20 verse 15. The third indicator, or just an interesting observation, is that the lake of fire comprises of fire and brimstone, which is sulfur. The Dead Sea, which is just over 20 kilometers from Jerusalem, contains sulfur, and gives off sulfur fumes. Therefore it could be that the lake of fire is actually underneath the Dead Sea itself and thus it contains sulfur.
Revelation 14 verse 11. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name.
The smoke of those people's torment of fire and brimstone ascends forever. This refers to their end state, the lake of fire. Those people will experience ongoing punishment. Side note, similar to Babylon that will be destroyed, whose smoke will ascend forever. Who worship the beast in his image and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. The condition for this punishment is specifically those who worship the beast in his image and whosoever receives the mark of his name. The mark of the beast's name could either be an image of the beast, brand image, or his number on their forehead or right hand.
Revelation 14 verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints, here are they that keep the commandments of God, and the faith of Jesus.
Tribulation works patience. This declaration is for those new believers in Yeshua, who patiently suffer persecution at the hands of the beast because they are waiting for God's promise found in Yeshua. God's promise is everlasting life, and a life with God which is beyond their lives on earth, like Yeshua's example. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. This declaration is made to the new believers at the beginning of the next 3.5 years. This Greek word keep means to guard and obey. The commandments of God refers to those commandments that God gave audibly to the people at Mount Sinai. At the end of the 3.5 years, the dragon and the beast make war directly with those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Yeshua, the Messiah, for they are true worshippers of God. The true saints hold on even unto death.
Revelation 14 verse 13. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them.
John, who was on earth, heard a voice from heaven. John had already recorded those things he had seen and heard, except when he was instructed not to record those things spoken by the seven thunders. Therefore, John would be under instruction not to write anything the seven thunders have uttered unless he was instructed otherwise regarding them, like now. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Blessed means being favored of God, and this results in true inner happiness. From this point on, blessed are those who are physically dead, who die in the Lord more than those who live on the earth. It will be very difficult for believers to live righteously on the earth because of the persecution, unable to buy food and being slaughtered for their faith. In addition, they will experience the impact of the bowls of God's wrath with the rest of the world, except for the first bowl, as the sores come only on those who have the mark of the beast. Yeah, saith the Spirit. The Spirit is the one who has been instructing and enabling believers from the very beginning. Due to the huge level of suffering, he knows and affirms with an agreement of yes, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from here on out. That they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. The Spirit adds that their death will give them rest from their labors and their deeds do follow them. Taking comfort that their efforts will not be lost, for they will be rewarded based on their deeds. Side note, notice, it will not be their wealth, fame or influence that follows them, only their deeds. The biggest intention is smaller than the smallest deed.
Revelation 14 verse 14. And I looked, and behold a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle.
This Greek word for white is bright. John looked, and there was a bright cloud, similar to the bright cloud when Yeshua was transfigured. Upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man. From John's perspective, the way the one sat on the cloud was like the Son of Man, Yeshua. John recognized the way he sat reflected his earlier writing. Daniel also uses a similar phrase like the Son of Man, and we know that this refers to Yeshua the Messiah. Having on his head a golden crown. The Greek word crown is from the Greek word Stephanos, which is similar to the plaited crown placed on Yeshua by the soldiers. It is a victory crown. Every time this crown is mentioned, it refers to the righteous receiving it. In his hand a sharp sickle. His sickle is for his harvest. The harvest are believers in Yeshua as they are ready to be redeemed from the earth. The sickle is sharp because it will be a swift harvest.
Revelation 14 verse 15. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe.
Another angel in sequence came, flew across the sky like the previous angel. Came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud. Timing is important, therefore the angel came from the temple in heaven, signifying the time has come. Cried with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, who looked like the Son of Man, who is Yeshua. Thrust in the sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. A sickle is a harvesting tool. His harvest are those his Father has given him. These are those who surrendered their lives to Yeshua. The reason they are ready to be reaped from the earth is that the laborers have just been removed from the earth, therefore there are no laborers to help them. In addition, before God pours his wrath on the world, he historically protected his people by removing them.
Revelation 14 verse 16. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped.
From John's perspective, the way the one sat on the cloud was like the Son of Man, Yeshua. John recognized the way he sat reflected his earlier writing. Daniel also uses a similar phrase like the Son of Man, and we know that this refers to Yeshua the Messiah. Thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. He thrust in his sickle because the harvest of believers in Yeshua are ready to be redeemed from the earth. These are those who surrendered their lives to Yeshua. The sickle is sharp because it will be a quick harvest. Before the bowls of God's wrath are poured out, we find these believers who did not take his mark in heaven praising God. Side note, this harvest will probably be quicker than the harvest of believers 3.5 plus years earlier at the sixth seal, where believers were transformed in a twinkling of an eye and possibly spoke to others on the earth like the saints of old did when Yeshua was resurrected.
Revelation 14 verse 17. And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle.
Another angel came out of the temple which was in heaven. This is the next angel after the previous angel who came out of the temple. He also having a sharp sickle. The sickle is sharp for a quick harvest.
Revelation 14 verse 18. And another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe.
The next angel came out from the altar in heaven while the previous angel came out from the temple in heaven. This is not from the altar of sacrifice but the altar of incense, where the incense was offered with the prayers of the saints. Had power over fire. Have authority over fire, which means fire obeys him. Side note, similar references to the term authority over are authority over demons, authority over nations, authority over 1/4 of the earth, authority over waters, etc. Cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying. The timing here is important. The angel came from the altar signifying the time has now come and therefore cried out to the angel with the sickle. The sickle is sharp for a quick harvest. Trust in thy sickle and gather the cluster of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. Unlike the earlier harvest that was for believers in Yeshua, this is the harvest of evildoers, for they have reached the extent of their evilness. They have not heeded to the warnings, they are worshipping the beast in his image, taking his mark, unrepentant and refusing to give God glory. The Greek word gather is gathering dry fruit. The bowls of God's wrath act as a gathering mechanism. The May 1st bowls of God's wrath makes them angry. The sixth bowl empowers them to gather at Armageddon against Yeshua the Messiah. At the seventh bowl they are thrown into the great winepress. Then Yeshua will press down on the great winepress to destroy those who remain.
Revelation 14 verse 19. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God.
The angel thrust in his sickle and then the bowls of God's wrath started. At the sixth bowl of God's wrath, the beast, the false prophet, kings of the earth, their armies and others will start gathering themselves at Armageddon to make war with Yeshua. They will be fully gathered just before the seventh bowl of God's wrath is poured out. Cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. They had already gathered themselves at Armageddon just before seventh bowl of God's wrath is poured out. The seventh bowl of God's wrath is casting them into the great winepress and they continue to blaspheme. Then Yeshua comes to trample them. The main gathering is at Armageddon, thus from Megiddo to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is next to Jerusalem. God uses this location as a winepress to squash them, as one would squash grapes. The one who would trample on them is Yeshua.
Revelation 14 verse 20. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs.
The main gathering is at Armageddon, thus from Megiddo to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is next to Jerusalem. The city is Jerusalem, but it does not look anything like the foundation of peace, as it would have been recently ravished by those who were gathering against the Lord. It had also been previously judged by God. God is now making a distinction between that city and others by not trampling on it. This is similar to God not bringing the plagues of Egypt on Goshen where the Israelites were. Yeshua is the one who presses the winepress of God's wrath. Those who fought against Jerusalem will be consumed by heat that their flesh, tongue, and eyes dissolve while they are on their feet. Yeshua will do the final trample of these wicked people. Blood came out of the winepress. The life was physically removed as the life is in the blood. Even unto the horse bridles by the space of 1,600 furlongs. The end result will be blood extending 1,600 furlongs. The height of the blood flows at a height of horses' bridles. The average height of a Persian horse's bridle is 1.5 meters. Side note, at the end of the tribulation period, how many people are gathered at Armageddon against the Lord? Firstly, some background. We know that towards the end of the 7-year tribulation period, that the Lord indirectly leads those who war against him unto a place called Armageddon. The purpose is to cast them into the great winepress of his wrath. The main gathering is from Megiddo to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is just outside of Jerusalem. God uses this location as a winepress to squash them, as one would squash grapes. Yeshua is the one who would trample them at his coming. In Revelation 14 verse 20, the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. Therefore, hypothetically speaking, how many people would this be? There are 4 indicators. 1. The winepress. The winepress funnels the liquid into a single place. The existing rivers, or the riverbeds, could be the funnel, leading the blood into the main river Jordan, and then finally into the Dead Sea. 2. The blood. The blood extends 1,600 furlongs, which is 296 kilometers. Could this be the sum of all the rivers in that area? The sum of the river lengths, within the Armageddon region, from Megiddo to the valley of Jehoshaphat would be an average of 330 kilometers, which is close to the 296 kilometers in Revelation. The largest and longest river being the Jordan River. The average width of the Jordan River year-around, excluding flooding, is 30 meters at the river bed. The other rivers that feed the Jordan River, we will estimate a 5 meters width. Therefore, the average width for the rivers could be 10 m for 296 kilometers. 3. The height of the blood flows up to the horse's bridle. Therefore, the height of a Persian horse's bridle is 1.5 meters, and we need to assume that the width is consistent for the entire height of 1.5 meters. 4. The average person has about 5 liters of blood. Therefore, the calculation would be as follows: 296,000 meters long, by a width of 10 meters, multiplied by 1.5 meters high. This equals 4,440,000 cubic meters. We divide this by the average blood a human has, 0.005 cubic meters. It would equal an estimate of 0.9 billion people gathered to fight against the Lord at Armageddon. So what percentage of the people on earth at that time would this represent? First, we need to estimate how many people would be on earth at that time. Let us assume, for argument's sake, that the world tribulation starts in 2046. The World Population Chart estimates there will be approximately 10 billion people in 2050. We know that religious charts have Christians about 35% of the world's population, but it is more like 20%. Let's assume that only 50% of these go in the rapture at the start. This would leave 9 billion people on earth. A further third of the remaining people will be killed by the plague of the 6th trumpet. Thus 6 billion will remain. Let's assume the following deaths amount to 1 billion people. Beast and false prophet killing many who turn to God, the bitter water from wormwood. Then there are great earthquakes, and great hail. This means approximately 5 billion people will be left on the earth. Therefore, 0.9 billion divided by 5 billion is about a fifth of the world's population will be gathered at Armageddon against the Lord.
Don't forget to subscribe.